We're fighting fungi and clawing the collector. That's right, it's Slay the Spire, the board game from Contention Games. In this cooperative roguelike deck builder, based on the hit video game of the same name, players take on the role of heroic characters, progressing through a series of bizarre encounters, discovering powerful relics, and gaining the strength needed to slay the spire. Where's my sword?
Right there, yeah.
Ha! Setup begins with character selection. Players take the associated character board and figure, starter deck, that's the gray borders, card rewards with black borders, and rare rewards with yellow borders. These decks are separately shuffled and placed near the character boards, which have some sick art. 3 tracks, you got energy, block, and HP, short for hit points, and a starting ability. Make sure you leave room for both a discard pile and an exhaust pile. Set a tracking cube on the 3 space of the energy track, the 0 space of the block track, and the highest space on the HP track. Separately shuffle and place the following decks. The Act 1 First Encounter cards, Encounters, Elites, Event decks, along with the Relics, Potions, Boss Relics, Dazes, Status, and Curse decks. Also place, but do not shuffle, the Act 1 Summon deck. Create a supply of the game tokens nearby and set the merchant board near the relics and potions. Set the Act 1 board nearby, shuffle up those map tokens face down, and randomly place dark and light map tokens on their respective spaces. Once placed, reveal them all face up dramatically. Set the boot on the bottom room of the map and set the character figures in the open spaces, starting from the bottom up. Randomly select an Act 1 boss card and set it face down on the top of the map. Shuffle the Michels Blessing deck, it's a 3-eyed whale, and deal 1 card to each player. Each player gains the red rewards and 1 of the 3 blue rewards. The red rewards are gold and a card reward, indicated by the gray card icon. To gain a card reward, which you're going to be doing a lot of, reveal the top 3 cards of your card rewards deck and either add 1 of them to your deck or skip them. If you reveal a golden ticket, reveal a rare card and add it to your choices. When you're done with Michels Blessing, remove all the blessing cards from the game. Before we get into gameplay, let's take a look at the cards a player might find in their deck. These have a name, energy cost in the top left. These symbols are different for each character, but they're all considered energy, and thus players can gain energy from sources with icons that don't match their character. Banner, which comes in 3 colors, gray for common, blue for uncommon, and gold for rare. A card type, including attack, skills, and powers, and a text effect. That's the text of the effect that they have. Most of these cards live in a player's deck and go to their personal discard after being used. As we'll see, some exceptions exist, including items, which sit above the player's character board, and powers, which stay in play until combat is over. Gameplay occurs over a series of movements on the map, beginning with the first room, an encounter. After a room is resolved, the group chooses a path forward. We'll talk about all the possible rooms, but the core of the game takes place during combat, which occurs when the players reach an encounter, an elite, or the boss fight at the end of the map. In the case of an encounter, players draw 1 encounter card per player. If this is the first encounter, use the first encounter deck. Some enemies summon minions notated in the green bar, which can be found in the Summons deck and placed in the same row as the enemy that summoned them. Enemy cards have a name and art, rewards in the form of gold, relics, potions, or new cards from their reward decks, HP tracker, which starts on the outline number, enemy actions based on an upcoming die roll, and sometimes a special ability or a summon box. The enemies in each row will apply their attacks to the hero to their left. If an attack is preceded by this area of effect symbol, then the attack targets all players. Okay, let's get into combat, which occurs in combat rounds, each divided into 2 phases: the player turn and enemy turn. Player turns are simultaneous. At the start of turn, players all complete the following steps together: reset their energy to 3 and block to 0, draw 5 cards to form their starting hands. Like all good deck builders, once a draw deck is empty, the player shuffles up their discard pile and flips it face down to form a new draw pile. One player then rolls the die. This result will be the reference number for a number of effects in the round, including some relic triggers, but most importantly, enemy attacks. Thankfully, players get to see what type of attacks are coming ahead of time. More on these effects shortly. Finally, any effects that occur at the start of turn, the start of combat, or after the die now trigger. For instance, the Happy Flower gives energy to a player if a 5 or 6 is rolled. They'd gain that energy on their track, moving their cube up 1 space. Next, in the play step, players can play cards, activate abilities, and use potions. When playing a card, they pay the energy cost listed in the top left, then apply the effects of that card. It then goes to a player's personal discard pile. As mentioned, powers stay in play, and some cards have an exhaust ability. After that, they'll go into a separate exhaust pile and won't be shuffled in with the rest of the discard pile. There's a multitude of cards in the game, but some of the mini-game effects include dealing damage to enemies. Players can target any enemy with an attack. If you see an area of effect symbol, you can apply that damage to all enemies in a single row of any player. You'll also want to save that precious HP by playing block cards. Some cards even let you block damage to any player. Some cards apply status effects like weak or vulnerable. Weak reduces damage from the next attack by 1, and vulnerable doubles the damage taken from the next attack. Once players are finished playing cards, their end of turn step begins. Trigger any end of turn effects, then all players discard all cards in their hand. Next, the enemy turn. First, enemies remove any leftover block tokens. Next, beginning at the highest row, enemies act left to right, each taking 1 action. This continues until all enemies have acted. Some enemies take the action that matches the die result from earlier in the round, and some always take the same action no matter the roll. Others have a cube action, which starts with the cube on the topmost space. After that enemy acts, move their cube down to the next action. When you reach the bottom cube action, start again from the top, but this time skip over any gray actions. Gray actions don't repeat. Once all enemies have acted, a new combat round begins with another player turn. Rounds continue until either a character dies, which immediately ends the game in defeat, or all the enemies are slain. When you kill an enemy, flip it over until the end of combat. If you are victorious, you get rewards. In encounters, gain the rewards listed on the enemy in your row. In elite and boss fights, all characters gain the rewards. Then players reset their deck, removing hostile status effect cards and shuffling their discard pile, powers, and exhausted cards back into their draw deck. They reset their tracks on their character board and lose all tokens except for gold. Return the enemies to the bottom of their respective decks, and optionally switch character placement amongst the rows. And that's the basics of combat. Gameplay continues with players moving up the map. Here's the list of the spaces the players may stop along their path. Encounters, which we have reviewed. Elites, which feature dangerous enemies. These combat encounters have 1 strong enemy that's placed in the bottom row. Some of these will summon a swarm of minions, which go to the elite's left in every player's row. Events, where players reveal 1 card from the event deck. Many events have options listed in yellow, which each player can make independently, offering a variety of rewards or gambits. Campfires, where they can heal 3 hit points or upgrade cards. Upgradable cards are double-sided and can be viewed by pulling them out of their sleeve. Treasure, where each player gains a relic. The Merchant, where 3 relics and 3 potions are drawn from their decks and placed on the merchant board for purchase. Each player also reveals the top 3 cards of their card reward deck. Of these options, players can use and share their gold to buy items for their printed cost. The leftmost item always has -1 gold discount. Cards from their reward deck, 2 gold for a common, 3 for uncommon, and 6 for rare. And card remove, which costs 3 to remove a card from their deck, thinning out the count and making more awesome cards readily available. And finally, the boss space. This combat encounter features a boss card, which are treated as being in all rows. Additionally, they have scaling hit points based on the player count. Track their hit points with the HP board. If the boss is defeated, each player gets to choose a boss relic and a rare card reward. If the players can manage to all survive and slay the boss, they'll earn the right to access the next act in the next game. And that's the basics of Slay the Spire, the board game. I'm Becca Scott, this is Good Time Society, and you, my friend, rock. We'll see you next time.